has never ever been an intellectual exercise. It's always been an instinctual one. You know, it's about kind of connecting with, you know, with the other actor in the scene and trying to convey things by doing as little as possible, I suppose. And Chris was very on board with that. Talking about acting is so boring. I don't know, you just try and be as honest and truthful and as possible, as like kind of in the moment as you can. It's trying to be as in the moment as you can. I'm sorry.
Emily, Chris Nolan told me that he didn't want Kitty to kind of become like the wife part. And that was, you know, it's a challenge when you're doing a biopic and, you know, important things like that. And I'm curious, I mean, you in some ways have the opposite challenge from Cillian. You know, you don't have a ton of screen time, but your character's, you know, she's like the yin to his yang, you know, she's more forceful, more outspoken. Tell me about how you approached your part.
I mean, she was kind of a startling force, you know, on the page when I read the script, and I was aware that all of their scenes together had some kind of quite high-octane, emotional or passionate or volatile pulse to them. She was difficult, she was complicated, she was, you know, from everything I read about her, wild and colourful and a non-conformist for the time. And it was there, really, it was all there to play with, and I think Chris embraced the fact that she was not very nice, you know. It was okay that she wasn't very nice or very likable or any of those things. I just thought, as interior as he was, she was forceful, and I think they were like a couple of sort of intellectual comets coming together. But I think on the outside, right, you can see someone as being one thing, and she could be deemed difficult and unpredictable and sharp-edged, but I guess I'm always interested in the shadow of someone's life. So why are they that way, and what makes them the way they are? And I think working with Cillian was hugely wonderful, because we'd worked together before on Quiet Place 2, and we had this kind of shorthand and this secret language, you know, that just, you kind of get it for free going into this next venture together, playing this very complicated marriage. So, I don't know, I think I didn't, and I don't think anyone did in the movie. I think everyone had, whether you have a lot of screen time or not a lot, it's irrelevant, really. It's sort of what you did with these very vibrant characters around a very interior, mercurial man, and what these characters elicit out of him was so exciting, you know.
As you researched these characters, what were some of the other surprising things you discovered about them?
I mean, it was endless. You know, the material that's available out there is kind of endless, and there's a lot of archive footage out there, and obviously the book was a really good resource for us, because that's what Chris adapted it from, obviously. You know, people ask me this quite often, and I think the answer is that he was intensely human. You know, despite being a generational genius, and we were all living in Oppenheimer's world because of what happened. We were all living in the nuclear age because of what happened. I still think he was so contradictory and so flawed and so naive and so brilliant and so unsure and so arrogant, and all of these things in the one personality, and that was really challenging and kind of gratifying to play. But I don't go into playing characters to try and learn things from them. I just want to leave as much there as I possibly can. For me, it's oh my God, it's talking about acting again. You know, it's just trying to be as honest and to leave as much there as you possibly can, and to leave it to you guys to kind of figure it out. To ask the questions but not give the answers, I suppose. Thanks.
What about you?
What was your question?
Well, you actually answered part of it earlier, but about what were the most surprising things you discovered about your character as you sort of researched?
Well, I don't know if surprise is maybe the right word, because we'd all researched these people quite a lot, so it's about kind of gleaning information and like tools and ins and nuances that could be helpful to you shape-shifting into this person, you know. I don't know if I was surprised. I think I was more just learning about her, really. You know, when we read the book, there were this book, American Prometheus, if any of you dare to take it on. It's like a massive tome, but it's very cool. And there were so many great snippets in it about her, about him, about their extraordinary relationship. She was a really terrible mother. Maybe that was one of the things. But I think that's evident. But
Emily is such a beautiful and amazing mother. It was very hard for her to.
I actually remember the scene where we're driving into Los Alamos and we had that little 2-year-old, which I think any of you who are parents, you know, at 2 years old, it's the worst age to hand them over to a stranger. And for this trip, I had to take this little boy, and he was just crying as soon as he was handed to me, snot pouring down his face. And that was the first take, which is the take in the movie. And then after that, he'd exhausted himself so much, and I sang like Peppa Pig to him to try and calm him down. And then he did fall asleep on me. And I was like looking at Chris like, look, it's amazing. And like Chris was like, we're using the first take. I was like, ah!
Tell me about the science in the film. I mean, you know, the film does such a great job of, I think, of giving us just enough science to sort of make us understand some of the stakes and what's happening narratively and emotionally. But it never gives us too much science. But I'm curious, I mean, you're playing Robert Oppenheimer, this great genius.
Cillian understands physics hugely.
Well,
I don't know if you're interested.
Well, you know, it's not the first time you've played a physicist, right? So.
No, I played a physicist in a film called Sunshine, and Danny Boyle directed it. Yeah, thank you. Again, you know, it was fascinating because what I found interesting about these men and women that I met and researched and talked to about the whole topic, and was that it's kind of like a burden being that brilliant. It's not necessarily a gift, and they see the world in a much. It's very convoluted, their vision of the world, and I think it weighs on them heavily. I think it weighed on him heavily, and I think that's probably why he struggled in many of the simple things, the day-to-day kind of things that most people, like a kitchen or like a relationship or like just interacting with people, and so I try to portray that. But yeah, it's, you know, these people that are this brilliant, it's almost like a vocation, and they're so gifted. It's a lifelong mission to explore the unknown and the mysteries of the world, and they're fascinating people. I've spent time with them, and they're endlessly interesting. But I do think, I don't know if being that brilliant is comfortable all the time, you know, living with it.
Describe the vibe on set, because I talked to some of the other actors in the film, and one of the impressions I got was that you know, everybody kind of knew their character in part because of books that had been written about them or books they'd written. And there was a lot of kind of just back and forth between you guys, even when you weren't shooting, almost kind of debating what your characters might have thought of certain things. That was the impression I got, but I was wondering if you could kind of shed light on what it was like to just, I mean, it's an incredible cast. And I get the sense that it was a very communal shoot.
You know, everybody wants to work with Chris Nolan. That's the thing. Every single actor in the world wants to work with Chris Nolan. And I think that's why you have such an extraordinary cast, is because people just want to be on a set with Chris Nolan. And he's such an extraordinary visual director and an extraordinary writer, but I think people may sometimes forget how brilliant he is with actors. Like, he is like ridiculously brilliant with actors, and he loves actors.
He loves you.
Well, he loves all actors. He's very curious about how his words sound in our voices, and so all of the actors, every single actor from like the smallest part to the biggest part, was completely invested and had done so much research, because all of these humans like lived, and they had real lives, and I remember there was a few scenes where we had to improvise a little bit, which is rare enough in Chris's movies, and all of the actors were just bang, they knew everything about their characters. It was easy for us to kind of improvise. So yeah, we had there is a group chat, the Oppenheimer. I don't know if that's gone around. I think that chat's still going.
It is. I heard tonight.
Yeah, it's a very active chat, but they're all like, as you can see, they're all stunning in the film. It truly is a wonderful ensemble, but they were all there for Chris.
He has the environment he creates is, even though he must have had a storm in his head every day of what he had to do and what he had to hold together for the film. But there's no chaos at all, none. And he's so understated as a person, and he's remarkably calm and unflappable. It's really wonderful, because then you feel you're protected from the chaos, and you guys know it's like a set can be bedlam, and then you're having to kind of turn it on and churn something out that is hopefully good and against the noise, and all of that goes away. And he's so English, isn't he? He's like the most English person in the world. So it was the most understated, like when he's happy, he'd be like, all right, happy, moving on, all right, good, yeah, and you'd be like, but it was great because there was no sort of, I don't know, there was no unnecessary faff or chaos or hierarchy or anything. It's the most focused set I've ever been on.
Tell me about shooting with the IMAX camera. And I ask that because, this is actually quite a revolutionary film. Obviously, Chris Nolan has shot lots of the films in IMAX before, but it's rare to have a film with so many close-ups and intimate scenes shot in IMAX, because apparently the IMAX camera is deafeningly loud. Tell me about, because I'm still kind of baffled by how he's able to pull this off, and also how you're able to give such performances with this giant thing just churning away.
You had it in your face the most. I mean, I think Cillian's face, the IMAX was shooting Cillian's face as a landscape, and you were just pulled into every nuance that flickered across his face, and there obviously are a million nuances because he's so mercurial and so brilliant. But I think the IMAX was kind of a gift in some ways for those moments, for those impactful moments. And it would come in, and it's like an X-ray machine. I mean, it's massive and it's very loud,
Yeah, it's like a very aggressive fridge, like it makes tremendous sound, and but you kind of have to get used to it, and like I'm a bit of a veteran with the IMAX now, and you as soon, like, it's very alarming at the beginning, because it's so huge and so loud. But then you kind of get used to it, like any other kind of format. You know, we've all gotten used to cameras getting bigger and smaller and tinier and louder and whatever, and we're kind of used to that. But and then you also it also reminds you that it's going to be on a screen like this. So you think, aha, okay, I don't really, you know, I just need to think it. You know, I just think it doesn't have to be that. Yeah, you just have to be present, and so yeah. Does that answer the question?
The film is full of, you know, incredibly memorable scenes, and I want to ask about a couple of them. I mean, first of all, you know, the Trinity sequence, the first atomic bomb explosion. A lot has been written about how Chris, you know, and his team wanted to create a practical explosion. They wanted to keep digital effects to a minimum. But Cillian, what was filming that sequence like for you?
Well, I don't want to give away any of Chris's secrets in terms of how he achieved that, because it is all like for real, in camera, no CGI. But it's components, it's different components. So the part that I was involved with was the piece in the desert that you've just seen, and yeah, that was all for real. But it wasn't until I saw the film and saw how he had actually achieved it with Andrew Jackson, his visual effects supervisor, and just actually it completely took my breath away. I didn't. I think that's what everyone experiences when they witness it and see it. But again, when you're shooting that stuff, you just need to just think about what actually happened, you know, what it meant, and what it. But I think Chris is better. He'd be, you know, better talking about the whole visual effects part than me. And yeah, what he wants to reveal or not.
Emily, one of my favorite scenes of yours, though, is when they say take in the sheets, and so we see your face, and it's such a complicated expression. I mean, it's a beautiful moment, a haunting moment. Can you tell me a little bit about shooting that moment?
I mean, sort of an interesting moment for her, I guess. Any kind of domestic chore must have been, for someone like her, having to sort of contort herself into a 50s housewife ideal. I'm sure she would have much rather have been there at the Trinity test, you know. But I think that the stakes must have been so high in Los Alamos, and they must have all driven themselves a bit insane in the isolation and loneliness of that, but in the purpose and the pursuit of that. And the stakes just felt so sky high in that moment, and he did bring out the IMAX camera for that moment, I remember. I remember the fridge coming in. So I realized it was quite a big moment. But yeah, I think the thing to remember, even though what these scientists unleashed upon the world, we're still living in the kind of looming shadow of it now, is that I think none of them felt that they had a choice. I think they all felt they had to do this, and the stakes were like monumental. And you did feel that maybe when we were filming and we shot in the middle of the New Mexican desert, they built Los Alamos, you know, in the middle of the desert, 1940s, 1950s, and it was just like being on what I imagine those old Hollywood sets would have felt like. It was so sweeping and expansive, and so these very accelerated friendships we all had with each other, and we were all in it together and so united that you don't have to turn anything on for those moments. You know what I mean? It's like it's very easy to just be transported by your environment, really.
Speaking of that, I want to also ask about that scene that comes right after the news of the Hiroshima bombing, when he gives the speech to the folks at Los Alamos. It's a beautiful scene, incredibly moving, and he almost goes into this fugue state. Tell me about that scene, because it's, as I understand, most of that was in the script, even though it feels like a very constructed scene with effects and sound effects and things like that. Tell me about shooting that.
Well, I suppose I should give some context. Like, we shot the movie in 57 days. So it was like unbelievably fast and focused. But it never felt rushed ever for the acting scenes. I'm sure the crew were under immense pressure, but it never felt like that. And I remember we shot that particular sequence in a half a day. We shot loads of other stuff in the morning, and then we went and did that. But like, everything is scripted. Everything you see in that sequence is all scripted. All of Chris's films, that's why there is no deleted scenes ever or any, because everything's in the movie. Talking about it, like Emily mentioned, shorthand and trust, and that's what I feel like myself and Chris have developed over the years. And I remember saying to him at the beginning of this shoot, I said, just push me, man. I know you've always pushed me, but like, this time just push me. When you feel like you pushed me enough, just push me again. And I felt like in that sequence, we just kind of got somewhere, And you couldn't do that with someone that you didn't trust or that you didn't hugely respect. The thing about working with a director like him is that his vision is so clear from the beginning. All you want to do is give him the raw materials to realize his vision. That's all you have to do. And to be the best you possibly can. And he knows exactly what he wants. And in that sequence, it was just kind of to do whatever you can to be as truthful and as honest to the script and to the fucking crazy monumental history that we were trying to portray,
What went through your mind when he first asked you to do this film? I mean, obviously you say yes, but...
You say a lot of expletives.
A lot of expletives. It was a gift. I mean, it was a true honor, and the way he works is that he doesn't ever, he just called me out of the blue. There was no build-up, there was no warning, there was no preamble, and he doesn't have a phone or a computer or an email or anything. So it was his wife, Emma Thomas, this amazing producer, that called me, and then she passed the phone over to him, and he said in his very British, understated fashion, I'm doing this film about Oppenheimer, like it's about Oppenheimer. So, it's a bit of a shock, like a huge one, but my instinct was to move very quickly from like euphoria and joy into work. So I kind of moved straight into work.
And how does one prepare for a part like this? I know you lost some weight for the part, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was important to get the correct silhouette because he was so iconic, and a lot of it was self-designed. He was very frail, and he was always very self-conscious about his frailty. Yeah, I don't think it was martinis and fags,
Why do they had dinner parties
cigarettes,
without dinner, like ever? Yeah. Like the Oppenheimers were known for that.
Yeah, it was just martinis
cigarettes
with no
and
food.
martinis.
Yeah, the only sustenance was the honey that they dipped the martini glasses.
Exactly.
Right.
So I just think we had to get that right. So you do that. That's just like a kind of part of it. So I worked on two planes. Like I worked kind of from the outside in and the inside out. If you know what I mean? Like just reading, and then trying to get the physicality and the voice and the silhouette and all that.
I want to ask you guys about this was, the film comes out right as the strike has begun. It's an international phenomenon. I mean, a huge global hit. Obviously, there's the whole Barbenheimer thing. It's this huge meme, viral, and you can't say anything about it. I mean, you're sort of stuck there, unable to talk about it. I mean, you did some press obviously before the film came out, but it must have been such a surreal experience.
We did meet up over the summer in the English countryside, and we drank wine and played ping pong, and it was very kind of nice to be together, because I did feel we got to put it out there. And yes, the strike hit at the London premiere, so we did the carpet, and then we all sort of walked off in unity with everyone. and went to a bar, I think. But it was surreal, you know, I never got to watch the movie with an audience, so I did decide to, because the whole experience is, when you see it, it's like a full kidnap, and you want to see it on the biggest screen possible. And John and I went to, we found an IMAX in Nyack, New York, and yeah. And it was a 4 p.m. screening of it, and I saw a group of teenage boys walking in dressed as him. And I just thought, this is unbelievable. This is just, with like pipes dangling out of their mouths. It was so cool. And it was when I realized that we were a part of something too big to word, really. And it was wild.
Cillian?
I mean, you know,
You haven't left your house.
Did you run into anyone dressed as you?
Did I run into anyone dressed? No, and I didn't. But what, you know, what people, I suppose it's, you know, it's an R-rated movie about a scientist, and you know, and like I have teenage boys, and there was a lot of their pals were like going to see the film several times. Like, that's nuts. You know, I mean, it's great, but it just shows you that, you know, I guess cinema is still alive and well if it's really challenging and good and yeah.
Well, on that note, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.